Welcome. It's nice to be the first lecture of the first day. The first year, the boards are empty. The chalk is full and plentiful. I hope you had a good summer. How many of you were here in Pittsburgh in the summer? Very few. Okay. How many of you were in China? Come on, raise your hand. Okay. How many of you in India? How many of you in Europe? How many of you in the US? Internships? Home? Okay. This is going to be a two-way class. It's hard to do with 400 students. Coming in, there are lots of seats up front to get the best seats reserved for you. Okay, my name is Roni Rosenfeld. I'm professor in the School of Computer Science. This is 10601A/C. I assume most of you know that we've had a tremendous amount of demand for machine learning classes. And in the past, for example, last year, there were many students who couldn't get in. This year, we decided to make it possible for anybody who wants to take our classes, specifically 10601, to do that. But that requires some technology and some online participation. So I'm going to go over the details of this arrangement, but I want you to be aware that this is the first time I'm doing this, and I think it's the second time it's done in the department. So there may very well be some confusion, maybe some glitches. Please bear with us. The first thing I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about the course and about how I teach. It's by far the most boring part of the whole course. It's not about machine learning. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can and try very hard to get to actual content before the end of the hour. The first thing I should tell you is that I don't use PowerPoint much. The best PowerPoint slide I've ever seen was a very simple equation. It said PowerPoint equals sleep. I very much believe in that. I use the board a lot. And I use my voice and my talking with you and looking at you a lot. And I hope that you look back and talk back. I have been teaching this class for a long time, so over 20 years. The material has changed and so has my style. But I always try to keep it interactive, and when I had 30 students, it was very easy. With this large class, it's hard, but I still try to do that. So I'm going to try to keep you on your toes. I guess it's a good time to tell you how I think people learn. I don't think I can teach you anything. Really, I don't think I can teach you anything. I can throw things at you and you can remember them for a while. But I can't really teach you anything. What I can do is nudge you to figure it out. And once you figure it out on your own, then you'll remember it. I know that's true for me, and I know that's true from research in education. That what makes people learn and retain and understand is only what they do. What they do and what they think. So don't come into class leaning back on your laptop and kind of listening to what's happening. Might as well do it over video. I don't think it's very valuable. Lean forward and get engaged. All right, I'll come back to philosophy in a minute, but let me turn on. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I will speak louder. I do have another microphone that I can use to fill the room. I prefer not to use it for the same reason I prefer not to use PowerPoint. I don't want to become a disembodied voice. I want it to be personal interaction. But if it means you guys in the back cannot hear me, then I will use it. Yes, please? Okay, not today, but starting Wednesday. It's in my office. Or you want to bring it? Yeah, sure. It's right on my desk. Here's the key. Okay, in 5 minutes. All right, website. This is the shortest way to get to the website. It's www.cscmu.edu twiddle Roni 10601. There are other links that would go to the same place, but this is the shortest. And here we are. I will go over the links here. I encourage you to go over them on your own as well if something is not clear. How many of you have read this description? Okay, I encourage you to do that. It's kind of late because you've already signed up for the course, but I try to tell you not only what the material is, but also my way of teaching it. Let me summarize it for you briefly. This course is not encyclopedic. It's not about telling you everything you need to know about machine learning or about all the techniques. I try to make it foundational. By this I mean trying to help you learn what machine learning is about, why does it work, why does it not work, when does it work, when does it not work, sort of the basic principles, what makes it tick. And of course, along the way, I introduce most machine learning techniques, but I don't make it a goal to discuss every one of them. Okay, so you can call it depth at the expense of, potential expense of breadth. It is not geared to helping you how to use tools, machine learning tools, or even on how to use it in industry. There are lots of other courses we offer that will give you more of that. It is geared more to the mathematical, computational, statistical side of things. We use Piazza. Anybody here did not get an invitation to Piazza? Okay. Two kinds of assignments, AutoLab assignments and Canvas assignments. AutoLab is a system developed here at Carnegie Mellon for automatically submitting and grading programming assignments. So about half of the assignments are going to be programming assignments, and you will submit them through AutoLab, and they will be automatically graded. And there is, of course, a manual override if there are issues, but it's the only way of keeping up with such large classes. Canvas is a system that was recently introduced to Carnegie Mellon. Some of you may be familiar with Blackboard and not with Canvas. It is the same as Blackboard, only less clunky. It's been in use at CMU last year by some courses, and this year everybody is transitioning to Canvas, and we're kind of ditching Blackboard. So I assume you're familiar with it, or you become familiar with it through orientation, which means you're more familiar with it than I am, because I'm not really very familiar with it, but I've been promised it's less clunky than Blackboard, and that's a good start. So the half of the programming of the assignments that are not programming are going to be questions and answers that are, again, automatically graded, and that will be done through Canvas. Prerequisites are really important. I'd like to spend some time on them. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thanks. There are 3 types of prerequisites for this course: programming, probability and statistics, and mathematics. The important thing about them is that they're not defined strictly in terms of what course you must take, but I give courses as examples of how you can cover the material. The most important one, I would say, is programming. It's the most important because programming takes time to learn. Most of you know that because you've done that. But if there are people in the crowd who think that, okay, I'll pick it up along the way, or I'm taking another course in programming, programming is incredibly time-consuming. There's just no shortcut. You have to bang your head against the wall several nights in a row before you get it, right? All of you know that. You've done that. So, and I don't want you to have to do that while you're taking the course. That would not be good because you have to write programs right from the beginning. So you must come into this course already having programmed moderate, I would say even small size programs, 1 to 200 lines of code, okay? In any general programming language, okay? You will need to submit your assignments in either Python or Java, but I'm not worried about you picking up Java or picking up Python if you've written in C or something like that. That will not take very long. Learning to program for the first time does take a long time. So you must have written by yourself, without help, a program of about 100 to 200 lines. If you're a student at Carnegie Mellon University, you've probably done it by age 3. I'm kidding. No, there are many people here who do not have, many people in the environment who do not come in with programming. And that's completely fine, but you have to take the programming, you have to bang your head against the wall before you take this course. The second requirement is probability and statistics. I actually do quite a bit of probability and statistics in class, but I cannot start from scratch. You must have the basic exposure to it. Any decent college level prob and stats course is probably enough. You just need to be familiar with probabilities, conditional probabilities, manipulation of probabilities, chain rules, difference between probabilities and frequencies. You must have thought something about it before you came here. Okay, I promised you all. It works. Okay. The second or the third requirement is mathematical maturity. And by this I mean specifically discrete mathematics. Does everybody hear me okay? Okay. Discrete mathematics is things like set theory, power sets, combinatorics, induction, relations between sets. We have a class here that covers these topics, and I listed here. 21.127, Concepts of Mathematics. 21.128 is fine too. And if you came, as most of you did, from other institutions, I'm sure you've covered it in your math courses in some way, but just make sure that you know that. Because in the past I've had people trip on that as well. Now, the prerequisites are not automatically enforced, except for undergrads, but the vast majority of you are graduate students, and the prerequisites are not automatically enforced, especially because they're stated very loosely. So it is up to you to make sure that you have these prerequisites, okay? If you persist in the course, even though you don't have these prerequisites, you may run into trouble, and I may not be able to help you. So just keep that in mind. Do you have any questions? I think if I stand here, I can see. Okay, thank you. We have a large teaching staff here. Can all the TAs that are in the room please stand up? All right, so we have 2 in the back and 2 TAs here and 1 TA here and 1 assistant lecturer there. So Daniel is our assistant lecturer, who also functions as head TA. And the rest of you, can you just introduce yourselves in a word and 5 words, name and serial number and...
I'm a Master of Science in Computer Science student.
Yeah. Hi.
Well, I'm Henry. I'm a first-year master's student at
Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're missing 3. That's okay. You have the list here. The thing to remember about the TAs is that they are actually not going to be all active at the same time. They are assigned to specific topics and specific assignments. And for each assignment and each topic, you will know who the TA in charge is. In fact, there are 2 TAs for each assignment. So they are going to be incredibly busy for 1 week each, actually 2 weeks each. In fact, they're busy for longer than that because they work with me on preparing the assignments a few weeks before and on grading them and processing them after. But from your point of view, of interaction point of view, they're going to hold their office hours in a very concentrated way. Because we have so many students, and we have about double as many students are in the room now, because there are many more who are watching, I anticipate there may be a lot of demand for office hours. So I asked the TAs to schedule during the week when the assignment is out that they are responsible for. I asked each TA, each of the 2 TAs, to schedule 7 office hours. So you will have an average of 2 office hours a day during that week. Hopefully it will be enough. They will also be monitoring Piazza very closely during that time. So you're likely to hear back from them. Even if your questions is about something else, they will be the ones who are sitting with their eyes glued to Piazza. And if it's a question about an assignment or a topic that we covered 2 weeks ago, they will forward it to the TA who's in charge of that. And orchestrating this whole thing would be Daniel, who will also function as 2 TAs. So we have 10 assignments, 5 pairs of TAs. The pairs will consist of either 2 TAs or a TA plus Daniel. You will see the assignment online when we talk about them. Any questions about TAs, assignments? The TAs will publish their office hours and locations when the assignments go out. My own office hours are twice a week, right after class. I found that's the only way to get people to actually come. So just come forward at the end of class, and I will walk out with you through that door. If the questions are simple and public, we will handle them there. Occasionally there's a line of 4 or 5 students. Sometimes it's just 1 student. If the questions are complicated or private, just follow me to my office. Mondays, Wednesdays, right after class. If that doesn't work for you, if you have another class, just send me email. Send me email and suggest several times. Give me your availability so that we can facilitate it quickly. Let me skip schedule, go straight to assignments now. So you have the assignments here, 10 of them. You have their order and the type. Autolab means it's a programming assignment. Canvas means it's a question and answer assignment. You have the assignment of TAs. The TA who is mentioned first is the primary TA for that assignment, but both of them are going to be very active during the time the assignment is out. These links will become live as the assignment are made ready, and we have date out and date due. Due always at midnight Eastern time. Questions about assignments? Just out of curiosity, how many of you plan to submit your assignments by using Python? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should do the opposite. How many of you are planning to use Java? Okay, still a reasonable representation. If there's enough demand for a third programming language, but it has to be really a large demand, we can arrange for that too. But it sounds like it's not really a problem. Like Python is spoken universally. Okay. Let's go over the easy things first. Textbooks. There is no textbook for this class. Question?
Is there a final project?
There is no final project, no. So there are assignments, 10 assignments. There is a midterm exam, which will be in the evening in economy. And there's a final exam, which will also be in economy, scheduled by the registrar. There is no textbook for this class, which is not to say that there are no good books about machine learning. There are lots of good books about machine learning. I use two of them. The first one is written by our very own Tom Mitchell, who is actually teaching 10601B. I love that book because it teaches the way I think it should be taught. It's full of intuition and it's almost hand-waving. It's a very, very readable, very nice examples, and I use examples from it all the time. However, it's very dated. It was written 20 years ago, and the field has moved considerably. So as a result, we only, maybe a third to a half of the course is covered in that book, and lots of stuff in that book that's no longer relevant. So I use it, especially in the beginning part of the course, maybe the first half. And when I occasionally give in and use PowerPoint, it'll be to display something, maybe an example from the book. A much more recent book is by Kevin Murphy, Machine Learning Probabilistic Perspective. It's not a book you would read cover to cover. It's more like an encyclopedia. It's very dense and very dry, but it's a great reference book if you're not sure about a particular detail. It's a great place to find it. And it's a good way to learn as well, if that's your style. So I'm going to use occasionally here and there, and when I show you the schedule, I'm going to show you the relevant sections in each one of them when they exist. Let's go to the FAQ. I'm not going to cover all of them. Hopefully how many of you have seen the FAQ? Okay, thank you. Let me just go very briefly about the differences between Section A and Section C. So the only difference between Section A and Section C is Section A is officially meeting in this class right now. That's most of you, and therefore it's limited to 244 people, who are the number of people who can fit in the classroom. Section C is for online viewing and is not limited by capacity. In practice, what happens every year until now is that throughout the semester, not everybody shows up for class. Maybe because I bore them, maybe because they watch my lectures that were provided from previous years, and this year maybe because the lectures are going to be webcast and provided later. I have to be honest with you, I think that's a mistake. I do think it's better to be in class. I don't think that video teaching or video learning is as good as in-person learning for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. I think learning is an emotional experience, is an emotional process. And if you're not engaged, you don't learn as much. It's an active process, it's hard work. If what you want, again, is for something to come in and settle in your brain enough until the exam and that's it, then maybe videos might be enough. If you really want to learn something, I think you should be here. Nevertheless, I think many of you might not come for whatever reason. And it's a shame to waste the seats in class, so I would like to open it to anybody from either Section C or anybody who wants to sit in and informally audit the class. So what I'm going to do in the beginning of the semester, just the first few lectures, is what I did this morning. Ask people who are not registered for Section 8 to wait 5 minutes. Maybe we'll cut it down to 3 minutes or 2 minutes. After a few more weeks, it won't be necessary. That's my expectation. Just coming in. Of course, there are a lot of people who are watching me online right now, and they're going to come on Wednesday, and it's going to be a total mess. So. Discussion of prerequisites, how important they are, can we overcome them or not? Can you take a class pass-fail? The answer is yes. You just sign up for it. When you sign up on SIO, sign up online, you indicate you want to take it pass-fail. Can you take it for audit? The answer is no. Can you come in and sit down or just watch it online? Of course. No need to discuss the wait list. That's pains of the past. Before you send me any email about registrations, sections, wait lists, or any of the things, please read the FAQ just before you send it. Because if the answer is there, I prefer you didn't send me email. If you send me one unnecessary email, that's 500 emails for me. So I emphasize unnecessary. If you have important or interesting questions, by all means, write to me, but please read first. I write the date of last update at the very top, so if it has changed since you last read it, please read the relevant sections again. Any questions about that part? Other than the issue of coming to class or watching online, there is absolutely no difference between Section A and Section C. In fact, I'm going to treat them as a single section. Homeworks, midterm, final, office hours, everything exactly the same. All right, let's talk about the schedule a little bit. The important thing to notice here is that the lecture schedule is tentative and subject to change. I list different machine learning topics: decision trees, neural networks, deep learning, shallow learning, whatever. But these are just examples. What I really am going to be teaching, or rather helping you learn, is the basic principles of machine learning, and they are the same for all of them. So because of that, I'm not that concerned about moving at a particular pace or covering exactly this list or covering it in exactly that order. I'm going to use these different techniques as examples, and of course to familiarize you with them, because you will run across them when you use machine learning. So as a result, the schedule is very tentative. If you bring up an interesting topic in class, we might end up spending half an hour talking about it, and then fall behind. That's okay. As we move, this is like a very rough guess, my guess, of the rate at which we will be moving. These are the lecture dates for now, for this semester. These are from a previous semester, so that's like 2016, I think. These are old recorded lectures. If you have time, you don't know what to do with it, you can compare my lectures from year to year, find the differences. There are some. As these lectures are given, we will add links. Daniel, I guess, will add links to the date. In fact, I sent around links for the webcasting, but I sent it only to Section C and the waitlisted students, not to Section A students, but you will get that too, and we'll put it here as well. This is Tom Mitchell's book. This is Kevin Murphy's book. These slides are book slides. They're not my slides. I may use occasionally some of them, but they do not summarize the content of our discussions at all, although they're very good slides. We're going to have a midterm exam, which I believe has already been scheduled. It's the week before spring break. No, we don't have spring break. So I've taught this class in the spring for many years, just switched to fall recently. But I think we have a date, we'll put it up here. And then final exam would be during final exam week, and that date is scheduled by the registrar. I expect both of these to take place at Meconomy, or maybe elsewhere. Questions about the schedule? Yes?
We don't have the exact date for the midterm exam yet,
I
right?
think I do, because I asked my secretary to reserve a date at Meconomy, and there weren't too many choices left. I think we do, so I will look it up and put it up. Okay, policies. Course grading. Here's the breakdown of grading. 40% for the assignments, 25% for the midterm, 35% for the final. The final is cumulative in the sense that I would like to be able to ask you about anything that we discussed during the semester, not only since the midterm. Having said that, because I've already tested you in the first half of the semester in the midterm, I tend to focus more on the material of the second part. I know it's a drag. It means that you have to prepare for the first part too, even though I may not use it that much, but that's exactly my intention. You can get bonus by being a top endorsed contributor on Piazza. So if you see questions on Piazza and you are confident in your answer, by all means, share it. Every year, I have top endorsers, and they usually become TAs the next year. Course letter grades will be assigned on a curve jointly for both sections. So I mentioned that A and C, I treat them the same. So we have a large class of 400 plus students. And about half of them will get some form of an A plus, A, or A minus. Of the remaining, about 2/3 will get some form of a B. B plus, B, or B minus. Now, there is this phenomena that students who get all the way to the midterm and maybe don't do so well in the midterm decide to drop the class. I don't want other people's grades to suffer because of that. So that definition of half applies to the students who took the midterm, regardless of whether they stayed in class or not. We talked about pass, fail, and audit. Let's talk about assignments. Assignments are, oops, I have to figure out a way to turn this off. Assignments are usually due a week later at midnight. I try to keep them tight because I want you to get practice in the material before we move on to something completely different. Each assignment has a designated TA in charge, in fact, 2 of them. Please direct all private communication regarding the assignments to the TA in charge of that assignment, not to me, not to Daniel as head TA or as assistant lecturer, but specifically to the TA. Since most of the communication is via Piazza, you don't need to worry about that. But if you choose to send email, send it to the right person. Extensions. If you have an unavoidable conflict that prevents you from completing an assignment on time, for example, travel to a conference or a medical emergency, please send an email or private Piazza message to the TA in charge of the assignment, and please do that as soon as you become aware of the problem. I've instructed the TAs to be very understanding and flexible with assigning extensions as long as you request them responsibly. So if you request an extension the night, 6 hours before the assignment is due because you have a conference that you're going to, that doesn't work. You need to ask for it as soon as you realize there's a problem. If you ask for it as soon as you realize there's a problem, just say how much more time you need, and they will very much try to accommodate you. Okay? So just remember, be responsible. Send a message to the TA in charge, either Piazza or email. I think they prefer Piazza. Private message on Piazza. State your problem. State how much time you need. Assignments turned late without prior approval will incur a penalty of 20% per 24-hour period or any part thereof. Questions about assignments being turned late? Yes? Then you write to me and we'll work something out. Yes?
I have two questions. My first question is that, is this partial marking for auto lab or is it absolute, is it 0 or 1?
Oh, there is definitely partial marking.
And my second question is that some of the assignments I suppose will be solving math problems.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, does the same penalty apply for which
I missed the second part. Since
with the same penalty of mark also apply over there for submitting it late?
you mean partial grading? Yes, yes. There's partial grading in Canvas. There's partial grading in Autolab. They're not automatic because we have to write the graders to decide on that. But yeah, I very much believe in partial grading. Sure. Mm-hmm.
How many submissions do we get on Autolab?
The number of submissions you get on Autolab will vary from assignment to assignment. For example, the very first assignment you get infinite. As many as you need to get it right. Some of the others you get, I don't know, 10, and some of them you get just 1. It depends on the assignment. Any other questions? Okay, we come to the most important part of the policy, which is the policy regarding previously used assignments. So, this is really, really important, and I beg you to read it on your own after this discussion. It's a kind of a long and legalistic policy which I've developed over the last 20 years of experience, and keep making improvements to it all the time. Here's the problem. The way I teach machine learning is by having you understand the fundamentals by implementing them yourself. Okay? That's my philosophy. I believe that in order for you to understand how decision trees work, you have to implement a decision tree. In order to understand how neural networks work, you have to implement neural networks, and so forth. I believe that implementing the basics, the fundamental building blocks, is the best way for you to really understand what's going on. That's not the only way to teach machine learning. There are other people who teach it differently, who say, okay, we'll teach you the math aspect of it, we'll explain it, and then you can use tools, high-level tools, of which there are many, and you build more interesting things using these tools. That's a fine way of teaching it, it's just not my way. My method is you implement the fundamentals. Now, here's the problem. The fundamentals have been implemented 1,000 times before, right? So it's extremely easy to find examples of the code that you need to write online or in other students' folders from last year or previous years or whatever. When I say it's extremely easy, it's the opposite. It's extremely hard to avoid it, okay? It's everywhere. Your job is to avoid it. Your job is to write it by yourself from scratch. This is really important. If you don't do that, you miss the whole point of these assignments. So these assignments, we do modify them sometimes from year to year. They're almost always modified in slight ways. Sometimes they're modified in big ways. Sometimes they're changed completely. But the vast majority of them have been used more or less the way they are before. Okay? Solutions for them exist online or in your friend's laptop. You are not allowed to use them. Okay? This is really important, and I'm going to enforce it very strongly. I want you to understand, though, where I'm coming from, why I do it that way. So, this was the explanation. Now comes the legalese. Let me see how much of this I want to read to you. Let me just read the underlined part. It is explicitly forbidden to use any existing sources, or to consult people who have solved these problems before. It is explicitly forbidden to search for these problems or for the solutions on the internet. You must solve the homework assignments completely on your own. For programming assignments, this means you must write your programs completely by yourself and not use any code from any source whatsoever. I will be actively monitoring your compliance, and any violation will be dealt with harshly. Collaboration with other students that are currently taking the course is allowed, but only under conditions stated below. So I will talk about collaboration with students. Collaboration is a great thing, but it can also be abused. I have a relatively simple rule for collaboration. You learn with other people when you look them in the eye and talk with them. You don't tend to learn very much when you just write down things or copy over things. So my rule is collaborate as much as you want under two conditions. A, no written notes are written or shared at a time. You talk. Two, you disclose the fact that you collaborated. So I wrote it so beautifully, I have to share it with you. The purpose of student collaboration is to facilitate learning, not to circumvent it. Studying the material in groups is strongly encouraged. It is also allowed to seek help from other students in understanding the material needed to solve a particular homework problem. So you can even talk to people about the assignments if you're stuck. I prefer you didn't, because it's better that you bang your head against it on your own. But if you are stuck and you are looking for understanding of what is it that they want there or some kind of help, it's okay to ask other students under the following conditions. Provided that no written notes are shared or are taken at a time, and provided the learning is facilitated, not circumvented. The actual solution must be done by each student alone. All code must be written by each student alone, and the presence or absence of any form of help or collaboration, whether given or received, must be explicitly stated and disclosed in full by all involved. Specifically, each assignment solution must include answering the following questions. Did you receive any help whatsoever from anyone in solving this assignment? If you say yes, that's fine. Just write briefly from whom and what the nature of that help was. Did you give any help whatsoever to anyone in solving this assignment? Again, yes or no. And the third question is, did you find or come across code that implements any part of the solution? Sometimes you read a book and the code is right there staring at you. That's okay. Just say, I came across this code. You still need to write your own code on your own. You have to close the book and write it by yourself. Now, I'll tell you something. You may think that if you saw some code, you might be influenced by it, the code will look the same. My experience is that when you write your own code, it doesn't look the same. It's like your own handwriting. And in fact, we have programs that compare people's codes automatically. And over the years, I don't think it failed me once. So be sure to actually put everything away and write things on your own. You will know when you write it on your own, because you will be stumped for a while, and then you will figure it out, and then you will have learned something. Okay, one more nasty item. Duty to protect one's own work. Students are responsible for proactively protecting their work from copying and misuse by other students. If a student's work is copied by another student, the original author is also considered to be at fault and in gross violation of the course policy. The reason I included that is I had a case of somebody who was flagrantly cheating, and the person who gave them the data claimed that he didn't give it to them, that they stole it from him. I flunked both of them, but the student who gave the code fought me, appealed it, and it turned out that giving someone your password to your account is against university recommendation, but it's not a cause for administrative, penalty. So I had to relent on this guy because he officially didn't break any course policy. Well, I plugged that hole here. This is with the advice of university lawyers. So it is against course policy to not protect your code, to give anybody your password, to leave your laptop open for other people, and so forth. It does not matter whether the author allowed the work to be copied or was merely negligent in preventing it from being copied. When overlapping work is submitted by different students, both students will be punished. To protect future students, do not post your solutions publicly, neither during the course nor afterwards. I'm really a nice guy, but I have to be a policeman for one more minute. All violations, even first one, of course policies will always be reported to university authorities, will carry severe penalties, usually failure in the course, and can even lead to dismissal from the university. That won't be my decision, that will be a university decision. This is not an idle threat, it is my standard practice, you have been warned. Let me tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. For the first 10 years of teaching this course, I couldn't care less. If you cheated or if you cut corners, I figured, you're an adult, you don't want to learn, that's up to you. But I changed my mind because of several arguments that were made to me. One is that people who work hard in this course and learn want their grade and their degree to mean something. And by allowing people to graduate who should not have graduated, or to get an A in this course who should not have gotten an A in this course, I am cheapening the value of the A and of the degree of the people who are working hard. So one of the most important assets we have is our name, all of us. And I want the name of Carnegie Mellon, and specifically of this course, to mean something. So even though I hate chasing cheaters, I started doing that. The second reason, the second argument that was made to me that made me change my mind is that people who do not cheat are really resentful when they see other people around them cheating and getting away with it. And it may tempt them. Otherwise, they might not cheat. If they see that it's happening, it makes them feel like it's not a level playing field. My son was an undergraduate here, and he made these arguments to me, both of them. And in a rare moment, I agreed with him. So, I'm not a policeman. I'm here to teach and have fun. But it's really important, so I'm going to be monitoring very carefully. And I am sad to say that in spite of this kind of lecture that I give every year, just about every year there are people who violate these, often in the form of getting help with writing the code without reporting it. And I do punish it very severely. So let's make this year a zero violation year. Any questions about this policy? Yes, please.
For the first question, do you want us to answer if TAs help us?
No, thank you. And if I remember, I will add that. No, help from TAs does not need to be reported. Yes?
So would the use of like a chat service or emails be considered taboo? You want us to be in-face and in person?
Ah. I think so, unless you convince me that there's a real handicap, a real obstacle there. Because once you have chat service, it's hard to tell apart arguments from here it is, right? And also, what I said before about learning being an emotional process. But I'm not against technology, so if it turns out to be a problem for you, come back and tell me. Any other questions? Yes, please.
The online version of this class, is there a way of asking questions?
Yes, of course. Oh, you mean real-time questions?
Yeah.
I don't believe so, although I would love to have that. That would be great. I would like to look into that. So I've seen methods of online learning where there's a TA who's collecting questions in real time and giving them to the instructor. And I would love to try that. We might do that. Thank you for the suggestion.
If you have a question, you can always post on the answer. Usually someone will get back to you at least within the day.
He's talking about during the lecture.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. I think we should be able to support that. I think it's a good idea. Okay, there was another question here. Yes.
What about help from previous students?
I prefer that you get help from current students. If you get help from a previous student, first of all, the most important thing of all of these is you have to report that you got help. Okay? If you report that you got help, even if the help that you got was excessive, you will not be considered in violation of the course. As long as you disclose what you did, you're not in violation. Now, if you got too much help, I may tell you, hey, don't do that, or try to figure it out yourself, or maybe reduce a little bit your mark, or something like that. But you were not violated anything. Now, I prefer that you talk to people who are taking the course now, but if the help is not about a specific assignment, but about understanding the material, by all means, ask anybody. Other questions? Okay, the last topic I want to cover is a really, really important one. It has to do with stress at CMU. You know there is such thing, right? So in many countries, and in many parts of this country, depression and anxiety carry a stigma. I've had students who came to my office complaining that they can't work, knowing that they're clinically depressed, but terrified of admitting it to anybody and saying that back at home it would be considered a big stigma. Those of you who don't know that yet, in America, at least in the part of America where we are now, having depression and or anxiety is no longer a stigma. It is a simple and sad fact of life. It's a very common thing in America for a variety of reasons. So I hope that those of you who come from backgrounds where it is something you don't talk about or you don't admit even to yourself will sort of adapt to the way we treat it here, because I think it is a healthier way of treating it. It is part of being human, and under certain circumstances it shows its ugly head. Depression and anxiety are very common, and are very common here for some good reasons. So here's a little quiz. Which of these factors increases or decreases your probability of becoming depressed or overly anxious? A little bit of anxiety, by the way, is completely normal. It's what drives us, but we're talking about being overly anxious to the point of interfering with your quality of life or with your productivity. Being human, does that make you more likely to be depressed? I think so. I'm not sure. Animals, well, yeah, animals can be depressed. My dog was depressed. But, you know, that's our projection. I couldn't ask him. Being in America, does that increase your probability of being depressed or anxious? Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, it's a little subtle because you don't know if the effect is due to the fact that people are more likely to own up to their depression or anxiety. So there's an issue of underreporting in some other countries. But America is a land of stress. It's a land of entrepreneurship and independence and, you know, doing things, you know, a land of opportunity, but opportunity usually comes at the cost of stress. And industrial lifestyle was not really in our genes. So how about being in your 20s, which most of you, I believe, are? Is being in your 20s make you more or less likely to be depressed or anxious? How many of you think it makes you more likely? Okay, you guys are raising your hands like this. You know, raise your hand. I need to see you. How many of you think it makes you less likely? Okay, you're more likely. Rates of depression and anxiety are higher in young people than they are in middle-aged people. Depression goes up in old age for other reasons. But yeah, being in your 20s is a very stressful time. You're still kind of figuring out what to do with yourself and who you are. What is this world anyway? Being a student, more likely or less likely? Yeah, that's a no-brainer, definitely. Being in a high-performance university? Yes, more likely. Okay, so you got 5 points against you already. Difficult life events. You know, divorce, death in the family, strife. Surprisingly, even happy events. Marriage, child being born, either to you or to your brother or sister, or even positive life events are causes for depression and or anxiety. Any big changes in your life can trigger it. Academic difficulties. Yeah, okay. Being sleep deprived. Big time for depression. Okay? One of the best things you can do for yourself is get enough sleep. Okay? You may not notice it right away, but if you are sleep deprived, it affects your outlook on life. It doesn't just make you tired. It doesn't just make you cranky. It actually affects your outlook on life. Eating junk food. This is one case of do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, I have a sweet tooth, but junk food, at least put it this way, more important than not eating junk food is eat healthy food. Make sure you eat healthy food, fruit, vegetables, and then you can sneak in a bar if you want. Socializing with friends. Don't think about it as wasting time that you could be spending studying. It's important. It's important to get a break. It's important to get to have friends and to do things with them. Important for your mental well-being. Exercising, really important and really effective. So exercising does reduce depression. It's been proven. Alcohol. What does alcohol do? Alcohol is a depressant. It tends to accentuate depression. All right, second quiz. Which of the following activities has been scientifically demonstrated to be effective in reducing or eliminating depression and anxiety? 1, taking a deep breath and hanging in there. Okay. So if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel depressed, if you feel like hopeless, like you can't, you're not prepared for this course or another course or the overall load or anything else, you just can't manage it, telling yourself, if you feel that you're not being productive anymore, you have a hard time getting out of bed, things look bleak, telling yourself, just hang in there, is not going to make things better. Trying harder. That's a favorite recipe in some cultures. Just try harder. This is not, depression is not about trying harder. Depression is a specific process and state in your mind, in your brain. Sometimes it has a physiological cause. Often it has a physiological cause. If it's not a physiological cause, it has a physiological consequence. Trying harder will not solve it. Waiting until the end of the semester. No, don't wait till the end of the semester. Deal with it right away. Exercise. Yes. Yes, exercise has been demonstrated scientifically to help with both anxiety and depression. Psychotherapy has been demonstrated to help with both. And antidepressant or anti-anxiety prescription drugs. So these are the holy trio. Exercise, psychotherapy, and drugs. My nephew, who's a doctor, tells me that prescription drugs. My nephew, who's a doctor, tells me that of the three, in fact, of all the medicines and all the prescriptions that he gives, he says, if you could imagine a drug or a treatment that is free and has only positive side effects, wouldn't you prescribe it to everybody? And what he's referring to is exercise. Exercise is free and it has side effects, but they're all positive. And it's very effective as the other two. By the way, there's research that shows that the effect of all three is additive. We will talk about additivity in our machine learning when we actually get to business. But the additive, in other words, that once you do one of them, you still get benefit from doing the others, although not as much benefit. So it's sub-additive, but it's still additive. There are many resources on campus that are here to help you in case you encounter any of these difficulties. Here are some pointers and phone numbers. Please note them, note where to get them, and please feel free to make use of them. Don't hesitate. Any questions about this part? Okay. So this is what we're here for. I promised that this will be one of the last times I use the PowerPoint. I mean, I will use it in quite a few lectures, but only for a few minutes. Most of the time I'll use the board. This lecture, I found it easier to just stay with the PowerPoint, but I do apologize for PowerPoint. I want to give you some background on where machine learning is coming from. Most of you were born into machine learning, were born and came of age at the time where it was already a big deal. It wasn't, of course, always like that, and I think it's very useful to have a history of how we got to where we are now. So the history starts with AI, artificial intelligence, as a whole, of which machine learning is considered one part. And there are many ways of defining artificial intelligence. My favorite definition is very simple: getting computers to behave intelligently. Usually that means getting them to behave the way people do in some tasks. You could argue people don't always behave intelligently, but do things that people do well, better than computers. So if people are better able to play chess than computers, then writing a program that would play chess as well as people would be considered artificial intelligence. Of course, once you do that, people no longer do it better than computers, then it's no longer AI, so it's kind of a moving target. So it is a moving target. If you go back 40, 50 years, there are lots of things computers didn't do as well as people. They immediately did multiplication better than people, but things that involve perception, control, planning, or human language were usually considered areas where people are much better than computers. It is not trivial and sometimes impossible to get computers to do things as well as humans in that area. So these are the traditional sort of domains of artificial intelligence. So here are examples of tasks from these domains: identifying objects in an image, translating from one human language to another, recognizing speech, assessing risk. For example, you're a loan officer in a bank and you get a loan application and you have to look at all the factors and decide whether the risk is worth it or not to give them a loan. Making decisions in the same setting. You get an application and your goal now is not to assess risk, but specifically to make a decision. Should we give them a loan or not? Assessing potential. You're in the admissions committee. Again, you have to consider everything that you think is relevant and decide on what you think is the potential of the student to do well in your program. Categorizing a complex situation. For example, medical diagnosis. You assess everything you know about a patient and try to arrive at a specific diagnosis. Predicting outcomes, such as medical prognosis, meaning what's likely to happen to this patient, what's likely to happen to stock, what will inflation be next year, what will the temperature be tomorrow. Predicting events, how likely is a person to default on a loan if you give them the loan, how likely is a student to quit school before they get their degree, how likely is there a war to break out. And planning ahead under perfect knowledge. Chess is a good example of that. And planning ahead under partial knowledge. Various card games are examples of that. So these are the typical domains of artificial intelligence. And the first attempt to create artificial intelligence was done in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s. And I call it, I think other people call it as well, knowledge-based AI. And the idea behind knowledge-based AI is the following. If you want to write a computer program that does something as well as people, study how people do it, and then encode that in a program. Codify the process that you believe people go through when they make their decision. So if you want to write a program that recognizes dogs in images, ask yourself, how do people recognize dogs in images? And there has been a tremendous amount of fascinating work on how our visual processing happens. We now know there's a visual cortex in the back of our brain, and it has layers, V1, V2, V2A, V2B. There's a lot that's known about it, and we know that the first layer detects lines or points in different locations in your visual space, and the second layer extracts lines from it in different orientation, and the third layer extracts things from those lines. It's a very hierarchical process, and you can try to imitate that in a computer program. If you want to do translation from one language to another, study linguistics and understand how languages are constructed, and try to build on theories, on linguistic theories. If you want to do loan applications, study the field of loan applications and learn everything you can about it. How are specifically study how loan officers make loan decisions, how people in the bank make these decisions, and then write effectively a simulator for a human. Okay? So this is known as knowledge-based AI. And there was great hope that it would really move us forward quickly. But there are some problems with it too. First of all, if you're trying to learn how to do something from people, you will never get better than people, right? And we hope for computers to not only do as well as people, but actually to surpass them. Second, this requires deep introspection. We need to understand how we do things. And this is not always easy. Say something first about the deep introspection. There's a difference between knowing how to do something and knowing how you know how to do something. The classic example for that is riding a bicycle, right? Many of us know how to ride a bicycle, but we don't quite know how to explain how we do it. But there are other examples that don't have to do with physical activity. You ask a chess player why they made a certain move, they'll give you an answer, but that may not be really the right answer. That may not be really why they made that move. People, and often experts, make decisions and can't quite explain why they made them, or they can explain it, but it's not necessarily the right or complete explanation. So it's a non-trivial problem to do this introspection, and it can be erroneous. Sometimes you need real experts. For some of these activities, such as recognizing dogs in images, any human will do. But for playing chess, if you wanted to play chess well, you need to find chess experts. If for medical diagnosis, you need to find very good doctors and so forth. Yeah?
Why doesn't this get better than the person?
Why wouldn't it get better than the person? I guess I did not prove mathematically that by learning from people you won't get better than the person. And you're right that it's possible that you will. But if you're using human behavior as the goal to emulate, it stands to reason that if you emulate it well, you will do exactly as well as a person. Okay? I did not mean it as a mathematical statement. I think I said that already. Sometimes we think we know how or why we do something, but we're wrong. And for all these reasons and others, this method did not work very well. If you go back to newspapers and even scientific articles from the 60s about artificial intelligence, and there weren't very many at the time, it was just a beginning field, there was a tremendous amount of excitement. And there was a tremendous expectation that within a decade we will solve all the problems of machine translation and speech recognition and robotics and so forth. Didn't happen. And didn't happen, I think, for these problems. Because it was based on the premise that we know how we do things. We know how humans work, how they get their tasks done. It turns out we don't. So this methodology was replaced by an alternative approach, which instead of being called knowledge-based AI, it's called data-based AI, also known as machine learning. And that started sometimes in the 80s and mushroomed and ballooned till today. And the idea here is that we don't write programs to simulate humans, but we write programs that will learn the task from examples. The advantages are that you don't need to know how to do it yourself, how to do the task yourself. You don't need an expert. And your performance should, if you do things right, improve with more examples to the point where you can exceed the performance of humans. On the negative side, we do need lots of examples. And by lots, sometimes we mean millions and billions. And that's a real problem, and that there's nothing that demonstrates to us better that this is not how people do it. People don't use millions of examples. They use a handful of examples to learn. And we're going to talk about that point quite a bit. And the other downside is if you do get it to work, you may not understand how it does what it does. You're paying with the sort of transparency. There's no longer transparency. You get this black box that does something and it might do it well, and this is a real problem. I mean, for geeks like us, it may not matter, but for people who need to rely on these machines in the real life, for example, for doctors, to accept recommendations of an AI system, it is quite important that they understand how the system arrived at its conclusions. They'd be able to reason with them. And they would not listen to a system, even if it's been proven to be reliable and accurate. They are likely to not listen to it if they perceive it as a black box with no understanding of why. All right, I think I'm going to stop here. This has been the least technical talk we're going to have. I'm going to finish this presentation on Wednesday, and then we're going to move into actual technical content. Thank you.